Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. If someone in your life has BPD, you know how difficult it can be, and you need to learn how to heal from those toxic relationships. And that's where this show comes in. Expert education, expert knowledge, expert insight, and delivered with compassion and empathy. With your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. To purchase and book sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. Now your host, AJ Mahari.
A couple things before we start this episode. I have a website for this podcast, and it's at survivingbpdrelationshipbreakup.com. Interactive website. It's a website is its own feed for the podcast and also for my YouTube channel. So if you'd like to get a lot of the videos that aren't in this podcast, you'd like to check those out, you can do that at survivingbpdrelationshipbreakup.com. I would just like to encourage you to please leave a 5-star rating for this podcast if you find it helpful, to help this podcast keep growing and keep reaching more and more people who could benefit from this content. I get a lot of people with BPD rating it at 1 star because, they have all these problems with what I'm saying, and they think it's horrible and disgusting and all that kind of BPD kind of stuff. This podcast website is survivingbpdrelationshipbreakup.com. And now, let's dive into today's episode. Borderline love is a looping trap of deception. It is not love. It is not healthy love. It is not a connection or a bondedness that is healthy. It is a trauma bond with a fantasy bond and a betrayal bond partner aspects to it. Borderline love is unbelievably, extremely painful deception that traps you in such a way that makes it next to impossible to walk away. And walk away and break the trauma bond and the fantasy and betrayal bonds is exactly what you need to learn how to do. And I'm out here to work with anyone who resonates with me, who is interested in that healing process and codependency recovery so that you can escape the negative looping trap of the painful deception of what is not love in any relationship type with somebody with untreated borderline personality disorder. Why you can't just walk away. Again, it's not about weakness. It's not about there's something terribly wrong with you. You're trauma bonded. You've been conditioned to equate pain with passion, chaos with connection, and anxiety with attachment. Your inner child is still fighting to be chosen. Breaking free isn't about willpower. It's about healing the parts of you that are still waiting for love to feel safe. You're not going to find that safety through someone else, especially a borderline or a narcissist, and you need to learn how to validate yourself. You need to learn so much more about yourself and get to know yourself and heal yourself and be able to validate yourself. A lot of that has to do, of course, with recovering from codependency, healing codependency. You must reteach your nervous system what love is, calm, consistent, reciprocal, and mutual. Until you heal that wound, chaos will continue to feel like, quote, home, unquote. Today I'm going to uncover something that holds so many of you hostage in these very tragic and unfortunate and traumatizing relationships when you're with somebody who has, especially untreated, borderline personality disorder. So many of you are being held hostage, not by choice, but by a powerful emotional trauma bond you can't see, or you might not have known about, maybe you know a bit more about it now, but you can't seem to break. So many people are stuck in the cognitive dissonance, among other things, of the trauma bond, and just can't stop wanting the person back in so many ways and for so many reasons. If you've ever said to yourself, quote, I know this relationship is toxic, but I just can't let go, unquote. It doesn't mean that you're weak. You're not foolish. You're trauma bonded. And in this episode, I'm going to shed a light on the invisible chains that keep you stuck. You'll learn what the trauma bond is, how it forms, why it's addictive, why that cycle is impossible to break really without professional help, and most importantly, how to begin to start breaking free. Not by force, but by understanding, compassion for yourself, maybe for the person with BPD, maybe not, and self-healing. So, part 1, what the trap really is. A trauma bond is a deep emotional type of attachment formed through a repeated cycle of pain and intermittent reward. It's not just emotional, it's neurological. In a relationship with a person who has untreated borderline personality disorder, love often begins with just incredible, undescribable intensity, and it feels like a soulmate connection, rapid closeness, shared vulnerability potentially, and overwhelming affection, and often just incredible, quickly, fast happening physical relations. And the whole thing just is so fantastic, feels so fantastic, that it just feels like it's totally destined. This is the person you've been looking for all your life. This is the person you're definitely going to spend the rest of your life with. And that's what people think in the beginning. But over time, that intensity turns to instability. The same person who once adored you begins to criticize, withdraw, rage, and or to value you. Then, just as you're ready to walk away, they return with affection. Pseudo-apologies, some kind of apologies, non-apology apologies, but they kind of have a knack of telling you some things that you really want to hear. And they might make desperate pleas, and they make a whole lot of promises that they can't keep, and maybe your heart melts, and you get that instant boom of intermittent reinforcement. All your pain, the cognitive dissonance, the agony, the rumination, it just goes away. So you're like, yeah, okay, maybe I think this will work this time. And you stay, or you let them come back. That's the trap of BPD, quote, love, unquote. The alternation of idealization and rejecting devaluation. It's not just confusing, it conditions your nervous system to associate love with danger and pain, with closeness, and you mix love unconsciously with abuse. This is not a choice. It's a psychological conditioning loop. You become bonded through both pleasure and pain, unable to leave because the relationship itself has rewired your sense of safety, or has rewired just something to do with your sense of self. And part 2, the brain chemistry of the trauma bond. Let's go deeper. Your brain is wired for survival and attachment, not logic. So when you're with a borderline partner during affection, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical triggered by addictive substances. It says, your brain, quote, "This feels amazing, stay here," unquote. During conflict or abandonment, your brain floods with cortisol and adrenaline, stress chemicals that create panic and urgency to fix things, because not only are you in panic, but with that comes fear of abandonment for many people with codependency, and a lot of emotional pain and anxiety. When reconciliation happens, in the times when it does, in recycling a BPD relationship, which is never really a recommended thing to do, but if reconciliation happens through affection, apologies, unfortunately, false promises, things they can't live up to. Maybe they say they have more awareness now when they really don't. And whatever their intellectual awareness that might sound good is about, they often don't have any matching emotional awareness whatsoever. Or so, and when the intimacy maybe also resumes, and physical intimacy, that's fantastic. Your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which soothes all the pain that you've been in. This creates a powerful repeating neurochemical loop. Pain to fear, to relief, to the intermittent reinforcement reward, back to pain, back to fear, which has cognitive dissonance, rumination. It's very traumatizing. Back to what you believe is relief, or, feeling of relief. Back to intermittent reinforcement reward again, and around goes the cycle. It's not that you love the chaos. You become addicted to the relief after the drama, the chaos, and or abuse. Your brain equates the return of peace, or what you believe is going to be peace, with proof of what you believe is, quote, love, unquote, when in fact it's proof of conditioning. This is the same mechanism behind gambling addiction. Unpredictability intensifies attachment. You're hooked not by consistency, but by the hope of the next intermittent reinforcement that equals the next high. Part 3. Why you were vulnerable to the trap. The trauma bond doesn't form in a vacuum. It connects with your history. If you grew up in a home where love was inconsistent, where affection was conditional, or where you had to earn attention through caretaking, compliance, perfection, or other things that are involved in the response to childhood woundedness, or more called codependency, your nervous system learned that love equals anxiety, that the wires of love get crossed maybe with abuse. And love could equal maybe just trying to rescue the other person, like a parent, who you're not being seen or heard by, or to some degree, or not enough. And so you develop this codependent people-pleasing. You might be parentified, infantilized, ignored. It might be like back and forth. And the thing is, this develops this pattern in you. And by the age of 7, when we're growing up in any family of origin, we are then wired in our brains. We are wired to the environment. We're wired to what we're experiencing. And that can be changed, of course, and that requires a lot of work and healing and recovery. But people don't usually know that they've developed codependency in childhood, or what was really wounding, or what happened, unless it was, capital T trauma. But it isn't always that. So when you meet someone who is loving one moment and distant the next, your inner child recognizes it as familiar, not safe, but known. And this happens unconsciously in your experience when you first get with a borderline, and etc. You unconsciously think, if I can just get this person to love me consistently, I'll finally be enough. Your inner child will feel like, maybe I can finally fix what's been hurting me for so long with mom or dad or both, or another relative or something else in childhood. This isn't weakness, again, I must stress. It's an unconscious repetition, compulsion cycle of old childhood wounds. And for people with codependency, to really varying degrees. It can be something that you suffered as a child that was not capital T trauma, was adverse experience. People often just sort of gloss that over as they grow up. They forget about it or don't think it was important. There's many different levels and degrees to which people are hurt in childhood, carry that into adulthood unknowingly, unconsciously, and often it is the predicate, the reason, the why that you're going to end up with somebody with BPD or NPD. And you don't have a clue about that. It's not conscious. You're not chasing the person. You're chasing the resolution of a childhood story, a childhood woundedness or worse. Maybe this time I'll earn the love I never got. But instead of healing your inner child and that woundedness, the relationship reopens the wounds, triggers the wounds, and causes a lot of reactivity and feelings in people with codependency who are with somebody with BPD that really astonish people. Often I've had clients tell me, it's like, I did this, I said that, or whatever, and that's not me, and I don't know why I did it. I don't know how that could happen, and etc. And part 4, the loop of hope and hurt, and where the fantasy bond really lies too. What makes this fantasy bond within the trauma bond so hard to break is hope. But more to the point, it's a fantasy of hope. It's false hope, but it feels like real hope or like positive hope. The relationship gives just enough reward to keep you invested. Well, until it doesn't give enough reward. You tell yourself, they do love me, they just need healing. Which, of course, a lot of people think can be quick and easy, but it takes 8 to 10 to 16 years. And that's if they get in the right treatment modality and actually see it through and stick with it. You tell yourself, if I'm more patient, they'll change. Fantasy bond. You tell yourself, we had good times, maybe we can get back there. Doesn't work that way. Each cycle of hurt, trauma, chaos, drama, rejection, etc., followed by reconciliation or BPD relationship recycling, sort of becomes like proof. Not that the relationship is healthy, but in the fantasy bond, oh, it's possible, right? So many people still believe, when not really, but that's the belief, that's the fantasy bond, that's the codependent need to believe that, to think it's still possible in efforts to try to avoid and get out of all the pain that you're in. This is intermittent reinforcement, which is the most powerful form of conditioning. Your mind becomes obsessed with getting back to the high. You need that hit, right? I've had so many clients say, I know, it's like, she or he is my heroin or my, coke or whatever, substances, etc., that you don't really use, but it feels the same. And it's like, I just need to get that hit again. I just need to get back to that high. Oh, this would take all my pain away. Of course, it might intermittently until all the pain is worsened when the cycle falls apart again, in the falling apart negative part of the cycle of the borderline. Even though the high is what keeps you trapped, you start believing the pain is proof of love, when in truth it's proof of the trauma loop, and it's proof that this is toxic and very unhealthy for you. Part 5, cognitive dissonance, 2 conflicting realities. Cognitive dissonance is the mental tug of war that makes you question yourself and doubt yourself and blame yourself. I hear from client after client and have for 35 years, well, I can't get over the fact that maybe it was really all me, and maybe I have this all wrong. And people really suffer with that cognitive dissonance and rumination. You hold 2 opposing truths. They love me deeply, and they hurt me repeatedly. And you might even say to yourself, with these 2 opposing truths, well, they love me, but then it seems like they hate me. And that is the center of cognitive dissonance. To resolve the tension, your mind distorts reality. You minimize the bad, you romanticize and ruminate and focus on the good. You blame yourself for their moods. You blame yourself for what they've done. You blame yourself for when they discard you or ghost you. You blame yourself for how they devalue you or why. And it has nothing to do with you. This mental confusion is not weakness, it's survival. And in codependence, it is unconscious repetition compulsions of something repeating from childhood. Doesn't mean that you had to have a BPD mother or father or cluster B parent at all, though many people who end up in these relationships and get so hurt and confused and traumatized by people with BPD or NPD, may well have a cluster B parent. Because accepting the truth that the person you love is also the source of your pain is emotionally devastating, to say the very least. So you cling to this false hope of fantasy, memories, promises or false promises, rather than reality, because reality hurts so freaking bad. Part 6, the fantasy bond. Many partners aren't in love with who the borderline is. They're in love with maybe who you thought they were. You might be in love with who you still might believe that they could become. You fall in love with potential, not reality. The fantasy bond is built on illusion, a sense of closeness that comes from intensity, not safety. You bond over shared pain, not shared peace. You convince yourself that suffering together is proof of connection, but it's not really connection, and it's not love. It's trauma bonding. You're not trying to change them. You're trying to finally earn the love that heals your wounds. But you cannot heal trauma inside the same environment that created it. And you might well, actually, I said you're not trying to change them. Many people are trying to change them because maybe you're too afraid to get in your own process and change yourself so you can break free and be much happier and healthier. Part 7, the body's addiction. When you try to leave, the withdrawal feels unbearable, like detoxing from some drug. Obsessive thoughts, panic and loneliness, physical symptoms, nausea, shaking, insomnia, anxiety like panic attacks, an intense urge to reach out just once more, and the cognitive dissonance with the rumination, and it's a nightmare for people. There's really no other way to put it. You interpret the pain as love, but it's withdrawal. Your nervous system is recalibrating after losing the chaos it grew accustomed to. This is why so many return and try to recycle these relationships, which doesn't work out. Not because the relationship is or was really actually good, except for the beginning, but because the silence feels intolerable. The loneliness and the emptiness that even a person with codependency can feel inside. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. It's just something that many people, when these relationships break up or they rupture over and over, you're trying to recycle, and the loop keeps spinning around. Many people just believe they don't know how to cope with that pain at all. And I'm out here to work with people who feel that way. I'm out here to work with you, if you resonate with me, to help you to learn how to cope with that pain, work through and heal that pain so you can break the trauma bond and stop any relationship recycling with somebody with BPD. But staying only restarts the cycle and reinforces the addiction when you're recycling the relationship or going back. And part 8, why you can't just walk away. Again, it's not about weakness. It's not about there's something terribly wrong with you. You're trauma bonded. You've been conditioned to equate pain with passion, chaos with connection, and anxiety with attachment. Your inner child is still fighting to be chosen. Breaking free isn't about willpower. It's about healing the parts of you that are still waiting for love to feel safe. And you're not going to find that safety through someone else, especially a borderline or a narcissist. You need to learn how to validate yourself. You need to learn so much more about yourself and get to know yourself and heal yourself and be able to validate yourself. A lot of that has to do, of course, with recovering from codependency, healing codependency. You must reteach your nervous system what love is, calm, consistent, reciprocal, and mutual. Until you heal that wound, chaos will continue to feel like, quote, home, unquote. Number 9, the way out. Well, freedom is a process, not an event. You break the trauma bond through education. I hope I'm being helpful with that right now. Understand the bond for what it is, a trauma-driven addiction, and something that's repeating from your childhood to one degree or another. Secondly, no contact or strict boundaries are so important, and without distance, the cycle will just continue. Somatic healing is another important part of this recovery process, calming your nervous system through breathwork, grounding, gentle movement, and of course, number 4 is inner child work. Reassure the part of you that believes love must be earned, is conditional, is mixed with abuse, is chaotic, intense, and just crazy making. And number 5 is therapy and support. You can't see your own distortions alone. You need reflective guidance. And I'm out here to work with you if you're ready to take on this process to really work toward not only healing your codependency, getting to know yourself better, but breaking the trauma bond and stopping endless recycling or constant rumination about the borderline X. And I have clients coming to me and they've been ruminating for 3 to 5 or more years with absolutely no contact because the borderline never reached out after a discard. And the 6th aspect of this, and these are just a few things, it's not the whole enchilada of healing and recovery, is grief. Because you really need to mourn the fantasy, the potential, who you thought they were, what you thought you had in your life, and it was going to last forever. This is not just leaving a relationship, it's reclaiming your identity that's lost in these trauma bonds and fantasy bonds, and reclaiming your peace, but also learning more about how to put you first, how to take care of you, how to respect yourself, and how to change your whole view of what healthy love is, and heal what is still very much at the core of your wounded inner child that is so affecting what's happening with you in the here and now. And in closing, BPD love can feel like magic until it feels like madness. The trap is not the person, it's the bond that convinces you chaos and abuse can be love. You were never meant to beg for affection or lose yourself to be, quote, loved, unquote. You were meant for calm, for clarity, for connection that doesn't wound you or re-wound you. You cannot save them by losing yourself. You save yourself by walking away with compassion and choosing peace for yourself, which is, again, part of the recovery journey and a process. And I would just say to you, think of this as maybe a mantra to try to repeat to yourself. May I see love clearly, not through fear, not through needing other validation, not through somebody else propping up my self-esteem, but may I see love clearly in truth and reality. May I release what binds me to this pain. May I remember that love does not harm. And may I have the courage to choose peace even when my heart longs for chaos. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope that maybe you can learn something from that or can augment what you already know. Or if you're newer to this, I hope it will be a really effective piece of content for you to really think more about what you are going through, what is happening, and why these relationships do not work out. And you can't predicate your fantasy bond and your false hope on the fact that, oh, this person with BPD who's untreated is just going to go get therapy and everything will be like really good. And often people think like maybe 2 months, 6 months, a year. And that is just not even in the realm of possibility. And remember, people with BPD do not age out of it. People with BPD do not automatically or just magically remit. They must go the course of treatment, best in a psychodynamic modality like transference-focused psychotherapy. DBT is not a recovery modality for BPD. And when some people with BPD, you're waiting around, oh, please don't do the couples counseling because it doesn't work. So many people try. And when you're doing that, you have to realize that it's fantasy. It's not reality. And you're keeping yourself hooked in that terribly negative and painful loop. And as always, take care.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast with your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. For more or get sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. See you next time.